Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. There we go. Well, hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We made it through another week, and now it's time for Happy Hour. For those who don't know, Happy Hour is a stream that we do on Fridays, specifically at 5 p.m., where we talk about, well, we don't talk about anything. We watch a woke training from start to finish. We watch the boring bits. We watch the cringy bits. It is kind of like we've been doing socialism this week. Happy Hour is like socialism light. Happy Hour is like the product of socialism. It's the outcome. If you if the socialists are in charge of the talking points that we're seeing show up in the Democratic Party, Happy Hour are the useful idiots who are implementing those talking points. But maybe not so much useful idiots this week, because this week I'm actually combining Happy Hour with the reporting from the socialism conference that I've been doing, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a second. I want to say before we get started, I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm really effing upset. I'm just going to be blunt. I'm upset. I've been crying all day because I've come to the inescapable revelation that no matter what I do, conservative influence is going to steal my work. And so what it feels like, for people who didn't see my stream last night, Jack Posobiec blatantly stole my work, still hasn't apologized. Kirk Cameron at least had the temerity to issue a statement through his book company saying, "Thank you, Carlin, for the journalism." So, he's not totally off the hook so far as I'm concerned, but at least that's something, right? Jack Posobiec hasn't done shit. Let me explain what this feels like. This feels like running up a treadmill, or running up a treadmill at an 8% incline or whatever, and you're almost to the top and you're almost done your run and you've been running up this treadmill for in my case a full fucking year. In my case a full year. I've been running up this treadmill at an 8% incline at a faster speed than I can reasonably maintain, and just as I hit the finish, there's a conservative influencer standing there on the floor, not running at all, putting the incline up more and adding another year onto my treadmill to say, "Nope, not good enough yet, not good enough yet, bitch, not good enough yet, not good enough yet, not good enough yet." And it's like there is no possible way I can ever be successful in that environment. And so that's kind of the realization that I've come to over the past 24 hours is that no matter what I do, no matter how much danger I put myself in, no matter how much I go out of my way, they will always steal my work and deny where it came from because they're pissed off that I didn't become a conservative drone that spouts their talking points. Because, of course, the most important thing to conservatives is not that you actually show up, is not that you actually do work, is not that you actually contribute anything valuable. The most important thing in the conservative political space is that you say what they demand you say and you stick to the script and you do not deviate and you do not call out problems and you don't expect them to actually go by any of the things that they claim to value. Like, don't expect them to adhere to individual liberties because they don't give a fuck about that. Image is everything. You have to have the right presentation, the right haircut, be the right body type, all this stuff. Maybe this isn't universally 100%, but this is the deal. My work in the past week has gotten millions and millions and millions of views from people who stole it and presented it as their own without offering where it came from. And do you know what that means? That means that I don't have the opportunity to put my work out there to say, hey, if you value this, like, can you please sign up for a subscription so it can get paid for? Because the reality is this, guys. There was another conference that I wanted to go to this year. And in order to infiltrate this conference, I have to bring someone else with me. I spent $3,000 going to the socialism conference out of my own pocket, and I think I'm about to recoup, well, over an annualized version. I'm pretty close to recouping the expenses when we do it over the annual version. But in terms of like cash, I'm just going to be blunt. In terms of the cash that's come in terms of donations on my Substack and stuff like that, I'm about halfway to recouping what I actually paid out of pocket for this. And so some people have signed up for monthly memberships. So if those people stay signed up, then it will recoup. But if those people don't stay signed up and they only signed up for a month, then it won't recoup. There was another conference that I wanted to go to later this year. I can't tell you when it is. I can't tell you where it is because that would give away what it is, but it's not insignificant. And I needed to bring someone else with me to cover it. And so now, because conservative influencers have stolen my work, I don't have the opportunity to raise the money to go to the next thing. Because someone's got to pay for this, guys. Someone's got to pay for it. At some point, the endless spigot of Carlin's bank account of money that she's reinvesting into doing journalism and content creation for people who don't appreciate it and just steal it, at some point that endless spigot is going to run out. And come on. I really don't know why conservatives don't get this. I don't get it. Someone has to pay for this stuff. It takes not only a tremendous amount of time, not only a tremendous amount of energy, but also a tremendous amount of money. And literally all I ask is to give me credit for the work so that people can find my Substack, so they can find what I'm doing, and if they're able to contribute $8 a month or $80 a year or whatever, then they have the opportunity to do so. But if you don't tell people who are doing if you don't tell people who's doing it in the first place, then Jack Posobiec's the one who's going to reap the benefits. And he's not producing this. Libs of TikTok is the one that's going to reap the benefits. Human events are the ones that are going to reap the benefits. They're not the ones creating the content. They're not the ones doing the journalism. They're not the ones doing the full year of preparation. So at some point you have to ask, like, can I even keep this up? Because this has been 2.5 years of this. They've been doing this to me for 2.5 years. Starbright, thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate it. Toward your next conference, your work is so important. I really do appreciate it. And to be honest, it also just feels like such a violation. It's not even just about the money. It's like it feels like a violation. It feels like why? Why? They know it was found by me. They know it was found by me. You know, Jack Posobiec. Oh, Sin, I'm sorry. I did not see your super chat. I apologize. Sin said, I was pretty mad when I saw your late night stream. I hit the cons with the eighth commandment and plagiarism. Well, they did break the eighth commandment. They did do that. I appreciate that, Sin. Thank you. To know how much work went into that. And they just fucking take it. All because I wouldn't speak their talking points and play their fucking game. You know, there's this famous picture of Jack Posobiec. I posted on my Twitter today. Let me show you guys. And I promise we're going to get into the real happy hour stuff. I promise, you know. But I'm taking a point of personal privilege because I've had a little bit of a I've had a little bit of a day. There's a famous picture of Jack Posobiec that I need to find. Hang on, I have it on my Twitter. This one. This is a photo that was taken in the summer of 2020. Jack Posobiec was in the Black Lives Matter Plaza, or like that little park area in Washington, D.C. around the White House. He had security with him. He had video cameras with him. And he had this big standoff with one Antifa guy. And this clip was run around Twitter all over the place. Oh, Jack Posobiec, big man, big man, big man, standing up to Antifa with a security team and cameras all around him. Jack Posobiec was a hero for doing this. Look how stunning and brave Jack Posobiec is, standing up to that one Antifa guy surrounded by security. I went to a conference with 400 socialists by myself. Do you guys know how many people told me not to do this? Do you guys know how many people said, this is too dangerous, Carlin, this is too dangerous, this is too dangerous, this is too dangerous, too dangerous, too dangerous, don't do this, or you're bringing someone with you, right? You're bringing someone with you. And I was like, no. It's gonna go myself. I tried to bring someone with me, it didn't work out. I went to a conference with 400 plus Antifa by myself with no security for 4 days to sit in a or 3 days, excuse me, to sit in a room with them and pretend that I was one of them, and I coulda gotten the shit kicked out of me if I hadn't pulled it off, and we all know it. And they weren't all Antifa, they really weren't. There were a lot of socialists there that were not Antifa, but there were a fair number of them that were. Far more than one. Far more than one in a park where you're surrounded by security and video cameras. And I don't need anyone to call me a hero, I really don't. And I did this all, by the way, not knowing what I would get out of this conference. I didn't know the ALA president was gonna be there. I wasn't sure. I mean, I knew she had been scheduled to be there. I didn't know she was gonna be there. I didn't know what people were gonna say. I didn't know if I would do all this and walk out with nothing. I had no idea. I don't need to be called a hero, but what I would really like is for people who pretend to play hero, the people who pretend for internet clout. It would be really nice if those people didn't steal my work that I put myself in very real danger to get, to pass it off as their own because they could never do what I did. That would just be really nice. And do you know what happens when I call this out? Do you know what happens when I call it out and I say, "Hey, can you not steal my work?" When I call out that conservative influencers like Jack Posobiec have stolen my work, then it's time for retribution. Because it's not enough for them to steal my work. If I don't allow them to steal my work without shutting up and taking it, then what they do is they start the smear campaigns and they start the harassment. Jack Posobiec's supporters have already started in on me today. They're already spreading smear campaigns about me. They're calling me an insufferable see you next Tuesday. All because I said, please don't steal my work. Like, literally all he had to do was put my fucking name on it. Because that was where he got it from. That was all he had to do. This isn't hard. This is not complicated. But I'm the bad guy for saying, can you please, good Catholic that prays your rosary, please don't steal my work. So, it's been a little bit of a day. Your hard work was just too conveniently there for them to steal since it went viral and they didn't want to give you credit. They used me. You know, isn't it conservatives? Isn't it conservatives who say, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, work hard? Work hard and you can get ahead. It's the socialists who want all the free things. Then why are conservatives demanding I work for them for free? Why are they demanding that I work for them for free? Because I thought it was the socialists have never demanded I work for them for free. The socialists have never stolen my stuff, even though there are socialists who watch this channel. True story. We got one of them in the chat right now. Why is it that conservatives are always the ones demanding that I work for them for free and shut up and take it, and I should be grateful to work for them for free? There is a watermark on the video. There is a URL on the video. There is a watermark on the video. They know where it came from. They refuse to acknowledge it. So, I've had a little bit of a day. And I'm a little upset. But since no one else on the internet is going to do what I do, the show must go on. Because God knows you're not going to learn the information that I'm teaching from the conservative influencers who steal my work and are barely even able to understand what they're looking at. Brooklyn Way says Jack Posobiec does not represent conservatives. Many dislike him. And then Tayton, thank you. Nice super chat, Tayton. Thank you so much. Stay true to yourself. We all have great gratitude for your work and dedication to teach and show people the problems on the right and left. I'm really trying, man. I want to make this work. I really am. I want to make this work. I've given up so much to try to make this work. Oh, God. I just don't think people understand how hard it is. I really don't think you understand how hard it is. Who's going to pay for the lawyer? How's the lawyer going to get paid for? You can't always just sue people, guys. Who's going to pay for the lawyer? You going to pay for it? Send me a check. Yes, PJ Media did write a piece. They wrote a very nice piece, actually. The guy that wrote that was really nice and flattering. That was a very nice piece. Jeff Charles wrote a great piece. He acknowledged me because he's a good guy. I guess the point I'm trying to make, guys, is that it's really fucking hard to do this. It's really hard. And it's only made harder when people steal your work and call it their own. But the show must go on, and because no one else on the internet is teaching the things that I'm teaching, then we just have to continue and keep going. So that's what we're going to do. We do happy hours on Fridays. Andy No also did give proper attribution because Andy No understands how hard this shit is. That's why he does it, because Andy No isn't. I had, like, there are very few people on the right that I've never had a bad thing to say about. And Andy No is one of those people. Andy No's work is impeccable and he has integrity. So we gotta keep moving. And on happy hours, we watch a woke training from start to finish and we talk about it, because the best way to understand what the woke left is doing is to watch them and to learn through osmosis. This is how I trained to go to the socialism conference, although happy hour tends to be a little bit lighter than socialism. But we are doing a little bit kind of like socialism adjacent stuff today, because today we are going to be watching dun, 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 we're going to be watching not that one, hang on. There we go. Now you guys can see it. Today we're going to be watching a presentation from the Zinn Education Project. The reason I picked this presentation was threefold. The first reason I picked this presentation is if you are a subscriber on my Substack, which you all should be, at least for free, which is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Again, that is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. If you are a subscriber on my Substack, then you will notice that I released today the latest update from the Socialism Conference. And this is a big one, guys. This is a really big one. I have multiple clips from multiple sessions of people at the Socialism Conference talking about what they call fugitive pedagogy or smuggler pedagogy. And that guy that you see on the thumbnail right there, that's a guy named Jesse Hagopian. Jesse Hagopian gave a specific presentation where he was talking about fugitive pedagogy, and he flat out said, you can see the quote, "Education should have always been a major focus to transform the world and see a socialist society. And the way they're going to achieve that is through something called fugitive pedagogy." Fugitive pedagogy is when basically socialist and Marxist educators ignore state laws, like this is specifically in Florida. They ignore state laws and they go and teach whatever it is they want to teach. In fact, let's just take a moment here to listen to one of the clips I have from this so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. Let me just set up the sound. And this is related to the presentation we're watching today. Let's listen to Jesse Hagopian, who we will be watching today, openly confess to breaking Florida law.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm Jesse Hagopian. I'm a teacher in Seattle, and I work with Black Lives Matter at School and the Zen Education Project and Rethinking Schools. So I've actually got to Zoom in and do meetings with classrooms in Florida and with some bold teachers who invited us into the classroom in the tradition of fugitive pedagogy, and smuggling in contraband curriculum, showing the film, The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks, and then having us come and discuss systemic racism in a state where it's illegal. And so that rebellion is inspiring to me, and telling teachers in my state to do this work if they can do it in those conditions, right?
So that is Jesse Hagopian flat out saying that Florida teachers have Zoomed him into classrooms in Florida so that he can teach the subjects that Florida teachers are banned from teaching in the classroom. This is called fugitive pedagogy, smuggler pedagogy. Now, here's Jesse Hagopian talking about how education is the key to building a socialist society.
So I just want to wrap up by talking about why I think this struggle for anti-racist education right now should be a central fight for the left, for the socialist movement in this country, for everyone, and struggle for social justice. I think too often the left organizations have seen education as just one among many arenas of struggle, instead of seeing it as a centrally, strategically important struggle that has the potential to bring together tens of millions of people. When you think of everyone as a public school student, and all the parents and all the educators who are unionized, this is like a key battle. Should have always been a major focus of those of us who want to transform the world and see a socialist society.
This should have always been a major focus for those of us who want to transform the world and see a socialist society. I want to play you guys one more clip, and you can listen to all of these over on the Substack, which again is carlin.substack.com, but I want to play you this clip. This is a clip from someone who he was an audience member in the Fighting Fascism in Florida session. And this is a clip where an audience member admits that university administrators in Florida are specifically mislabeling things so that they can bring him onto campus to shit talk Ron DeSantis. Kenneth, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Let's listen to this.
Then the second question I have is, I'm a sports writer. I'm speaking at Florida Atlantic University in November. And I didn't even want to do it at first because of everything that's happening there. But when I said to them, I said, I'll only do a talk that's called Burn It All Down, Ron DeSantis, Florida. And I said that in a way that was sort of like my middle finger to them, like, yeah, I'm not going there. Yeah, that's what I'm talking. And I was surprised what they got back to me was, please come do that talk. Come do that talk. Oh, it's November 10th. But then please come back. But then they got back to me and said, we just heard from the administration. We can't call it that. You have to come and just do a talk called Sports Today. So they took it from burn it all down to sports, but then they said, but you can still talk about whatever you want. So that gets to the question of fugitive pedagogy. That gets to the question of smuggling ideas. And it also gets to the question about why boycotts are so tricky, because I get it. You're a person of color. You're from a marginalized community. That is dangerous space. But if I could go down there and kick a little bit of ass, that seems like an important thing to do. Yes. Just like as a Jewish person, I got to put my neck out for my Palestinian siblings, because otherwise, what are we really doing? What are we really doing? And the message that I think I want to give at FAU, and this is a question, I want to say, think about some of the Ibram Kendi thoughts about racism and say there's no such thing as being a non-fascist. You're either a fascist or you are an anti-fascist, and you can't be neutral on a moving train, and it's time to pick a side. And I want what you know about Florida, if you think that's going to resonate with people, to build the resistance. And the last thing is, when I say resistance, I mean that in the century-old tradition of anti-fascist resistance, because that's where we are. And if we're not reading about like France in the 30s or apartheid South Africa in the 80s, we're doing ourselves a disservice, because people have fought these fights before, and we have to make sure that they didn't fight those fights in vain. And we are building on the incredible century of anti-fascist, anti-racist, anti-oppression organizing that people have fought and died for throughout the world.
So, that was a guy in Florida talking about how he's going to go do fugitive pedagogy in Florida by lying to the public university, because Florida Atlantic University is a public university, by lying to the public university administrators about what he's going to talk about, so that when he's going to say he's talking about sports, but then he's going to go show up and say, you're either a fascist or an anti-fascist. That's what's on the Substack today, guys. That conservatives will inevitably steal probably before this stream is over. But the reason I brought this up is because this guy, Jesse Hagopian is on the committee for Black Lives Matter in schools. Jesse Hagopian is a part of the Zinn Education Project. He was the first guy that you heard talking about like basically like fugitive pedagogy, and that this is how we make a socialist society and all that stuff. Well, dun dun dun, not that one. Guess who is in this presentation with Kimberle Crenshaw? Kimberle Crenshaw is the creator of Intersectionality. Guess who's in this presentation with Kimberle Crenshaw and the Zinn Education Project? Oh, he's up in the corner right there. That's Jesse Hagopian. So we have the guy that I got on tape at the socialism conference talking about how we need to use education to create our socialist society. We have him with Kimberle Crenshaw, the creator of Intersectionality, on the Zinn Education Project's homepage. And so I thought that this would be a good presentation to watch today. It is called Dr. Kimberle Crenshaw on Teaching Truthfully About U.S. History. On June 12th, 2023, but a couple of months ago, the Zinn Education Project hosted Dr. Kimberle Crenshaw to discuss the importance of teaching truthfully about U.S. history and its impact to the present. Crenshaw was in conversations with Rethinking Schools editor and high school teacher Jesse Hagopian. That's right, Jesse Hagopian's also a high school teacher in Seattle, and Rethinking Schools executive director Sierra. There's another reason that I wanted to watch this presentation. I'm starting to figure out what the socialist means when they say you're not allowing us to teach truthful history. And I have a clip from the socialism conference that basically says this. I need to go back and find it. I have so many hours of information that I'm still wading through. But I'm starting to understand. You guys know how the argument that the left makes against like not teaching critical race theory is you're not teaching accurate history in school if you're not teaching critical race theory. Well, I started to figure out at the socialism conference that what they mean by teaching accurate history or teaching truthful history, what they mean is teaching radical history. It means that they only consider history to be true if you are presenting it from the most extreme left radical perspective. That is the only type of history that they will acknowledge. And maybe that seems like an oversimplification, but to be honest, I had just never thought about that before. For me, I'm like, I learned about slavery in school. I learned about like the Civil War. I learned about like what is untruthful about this? Well, what's untruthful about it is not that I didn't learn about slavery. It's that I didn't learn that the United States is built on systemic racism, which is a far left radical interpretation of what's going on. But how they present it when they're doing stuff like this or like showing up on the news is they go, we just want to be able to teach truthful, accurate history. No, they don't. No, they don't. They want to be able to teach radical history. Yes, Kristen, through a socialist lens. That is what they want to do. You can all comment to go correct it. You can go give it a try, see what happens. I would appreciate it. Like you're perfectly capable of going and doing what you want. So guys, that is what we're watching today. Please do mount that like button for me if you have not already. There is a shocking disparity between the number of people who are watching right now and the number of people who have mounted that like button. So mounting the like button tells YouTube that you're enjoying the stream, that you want more people to come and join us. We have a couple orders of business before we get started. And one of those orders is I should probably bring up the bingo card. We're going to bust out old-fashioned bingo for this. We're going to do good old Unwoke bingo. We haven't played Unwoke bingo in a while. Hang on. There we go. There's Unwoke bingo. I'm going to go ahead and pop this link in the chat. Let me see. Pop it in the chat over on Rumble as well. To get your Unwoke bingo card, go ahead and click Generate Card. And then you get a free square in the middle, and then we're going for lines or we're going for corners. If you get a bingo, just shout out bingo in the chat. You don't win anything, but we will give you a nice round of applause and congratulate you on your stunning accomplishment of getting a bingo. And it's just a way to keep us involved as we're working our way through. Also, do make sure you are subscribed to the Substack. I already said this, but I'm going to say it again. If you want to support the work I'm doing, because conservative influencers need someone to do their journalism for them, God knows they won't have anything to talk about if I don't do it for them. So if you want to support that work, head over to my Substack, Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Sign up for $8 a month or $80 a year. You can also sign up on Locals. You can sign up on Patreon. You can become a member of the YouTube channel, etc., etc., etc. You get access to a variety of perks, to include 2 Zoom calls with me every single week, to include Bitchcraft. We're doing Bitchcraft tomorrow at 3 p.m. Yay. I haven't really talked about this that much, but we are doing it. It's the second Saturday of the month tomorrow. So we will be doing Bitchcraft at 3 p.m. tomorrow, which is an open Zoom where we bitch and we craft. I, of course, will be knitting as the far most superior of all craft, but you can do whatever craft you like. You can paint, you can draw, you can sew, you can even crochet, you can clean your gun, you can fold your laundry. You can just come and hang out, whatever you want to do. We will be doing that tomorrow at 3 p.m. and I will be sending out a Zoom link for that. We also do movie nights in my supporter Discord on Sunday night. Does anyone know what we're watching this week? I don't know what we're watching this week for movie night because I'm not in charge of that. But I'm sure someone in the group knows what we're watching this week and they'll be able to chat it in. But we do watch a new movie every single week for movie night. I hope we're watching something good. That'd be pretty great. So if you don't like the movie we end up watching this week, there's always a next time. You can join us in the supporter Discord every Sunday at 8 p.m. for movie night. And of course, if you do want some cool merch and another way to support the work I'm doing, head over to the Unwoke art store. Lots of great stuff on there. We got the Trump indictment victory shirt. We got the Trump mugshot. We've got All Tears Are Tasty. We've got my personal favorite right now. I'm going to make a t-shirt that says conservatives always steal my content, but we do have the socialists always lie t-shirt, which fits in great with me being at a socialist conference all last weekend. I even wore it on the way home. So you can get that and so much more in the Unwoke art store. You can also get the Socialism Saturday t-shirt, the Be Bourgeois t-shirt, and all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to support the work I'm doing. Last thing is I need a beer. Now, typically I go to the beer store and I get some beer to drink, but I didn't have time to do that today. So I have to go with what's in my fridge. And so usually you guys get to vote. I'm sorry, you're not going to get to vote today because I have 2 beers and I need to drink them in order. Okay. The first beer, the one I'm going to start off with, is called Sack Lunch Blackberry. And this is a sour ale with blackberry and fluffernutter. So blackberry fluffernutter sour ale is going to be the first one, and that's what I'm going to drink first. And then I have a rich, creamy dessert style beer. This is from Out of Order Brewing Company. This is basically a smoothie in the form of a beer. And this is called You Got It Sug. And it has copious amounts of watermelon strawberries, beignets. It's a beignet beer. Pastry cream and lactose. And I got to drink that one second because it's super, 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 super thick. All right. So that's going in the freezer or in the cooler for right now. Let me pour this beer before we get it started. Well, we're not going to vote right now, Bob. We're going to do it in order. I'm sorry. I slacked on going to the beer store today because I was upset. But here's our Sack Lunch Blackberries Fluffernutter Sour. Cheers, everyone. Happy Friday. Let us know if you're drinking something fun in the chat. Oh, this is nice and thick. Oh, look at that. Yay! Happy Friday, guys. Cheers. All right, let's get this party started. We've been here long enough, 40 minutes before we even get started. That's a typical happy hour. Let me get the sound set up. Do. Again, we are watching Kimberle Crenshaw and Jesse Hagopian on the Howard Zinn Project channel talking about teaching truthful history.
Well, I'm really happy to get to welcome Dr. Kimberle Crenshaw.
That's
She
Jesse
is the
Hagopian.
co-founder and executive director of the African American Policy Forum and a bicoastal professor of law at both UCLA and Columbia. Is a brilliant scholar and writer on civil rights, critical race theory, Black feminist legal theory, race, racism, and the law. And I also just want to say that her work has meant a lot to me as a teacher in my own classroom. You know, for years,
Oh,
I've
really,
begun
Jesse?
every school year
okay.
with using her writing and an online speech that she gave from the.
Look at his shirt. Look at his shirt. Scholarly hat, CRT. He basically has a t-shirt saying he teaches CRT. Remember, Jesse teaches in Seattle. He teaches high school in Seattle. So Seattle would be accepting of that sort of thing.
Women of the World Conference in 2016 to introduce my students to the concept of intersectionality, and then using that concept throughout the year, you know, tracing intersectional identities in every unit that we're studying. And it's just been so foundational to my students' understanding of the world. So thank you for that, and welcome, Dr. Crenshaw.
Thank you, Jesse. And from here on in, it's Kim and Jesse. Okay.
Right on. I appreciate you.
Thank
Well,
you.
I have a opening question for you about the moment that we're in.
This smells like peanut butter.
So let's
so
just
good.
jump right into it.
Yeah.
You know, when the Republican Party began labeling everything that scares them as critical race theory.
That never happened. That literally never happened, Jesse. Critical race theory does have a definition. Well, there are many definitions of CRT. I'll give you my definition of critical race theory. Critical race theory is an ideology that started in academia in the 70s that says racism exists everywhere in every person and everything and every interaction. And the job of the critical theorist is to explore how, not if, how racism occurs in every circumstance, because racism is always assumed to have occurred, because one of the underlying assumptions of critical race theory is that racism is one of the fundamental organizing principles of society.
And then attacking it. I think too few people had any idea what CRT was, including the conservatives launching the attack.
I'm pretty sure I just defined it for you, Jesse. I seriously wonder if Jesse Hagopian would be able to come up with a definition of critical race theory. But I will say this. This is why, guys, and I know I haven't beaten this drum in a while, but this presentation was a couple of months ago. This was a recent presentation. This wasn't 2 years ago, okay? So you need to memorize a definition of critical race theory. Just one definition. And be consistent about it. You could do my definition. You could use James Lindsay's definition, which is critical race theory is the belief that racism is the fundamental organizing principle of society. You could use whatever Chris Rufo is using for a definition. You could use any definition, but just memorize one, because I've heard this over and over and over again when I tell people to memorize definitions. What's going to happen if you ever start talking about this publicly, someone's going to say, do you even know what critical race theory is? And when someone says, do you even know what critical race theory is, just like Jesse Hagopian's doing now, what you want to be able to say is, critical race theory is an ideology that started in academia in the 70s that says racism exists everywhere in every person and everything and every interaction. And the job of the critical theorist is to explore how, not if, racism occurs in every single circumstance, because one of the fundamental beliefs of critical race theory is that racism is always assumed to have occurred. I rattled that off pretty quickly, but it is written in my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life, which you can find in the description below.
And most of the teachers who are being targeted as teaching critical race theory. And so while anti-racist teachers certainly share a commitment with critical race theorists to teach a structural analysis of racism, I think very few have ever really been formally educated themselves.
Isn't it funny that a presentation literally titled Teaching Truthfully About U.S. History starts off with a lecture about what critical race theory is and a definition of critical race theory? So the argument that the Zinn Education Project and Jesse Hagopian and Kimberle Crenshaw are making is that the only form of truthful U.S. history is critical race theory. And in the same sentence, by the way, they'll say, critical race theory isn't even taught in K through 12 schools. Well, of course, critical race theory is taught in K through 12 schools. And I don't want to see anyone talking about praxis because no one understands what the word praxis means. Critical race theory is taught in K through 12 schools. The minute that we start nitpicking around saying, it's not critical race theory, it's critical race praxis, no one knows what that means. We hurt ourselves when we nitpick about these things because the left is not nitpicking about these things. If we say critical race praxis is taught in schools, the left is going to say, oh, so you're saying that critical race theory isn't taught in schools and it's just this mysterious praxis thing? What does praxis even mean? You know what I'm saying? You have to commit to these things as much as the left commits to these things, because if you don't, or you start to waffle or you nitpick, they know they've got you.
Was about CRT. So, you know, as one of the founding practitioners in the field, I was hoping you could talk to us about what critical race theory is and how learning CRT could improve teaching and learning in the classroom.
Well, thank you, Jesse, and thank you for starting with the observation that the attack on critical race theory has nothing to do with what critical race theory actually is.
Wrong, lie.
And also, I think acknowledging one of the challenges that those of us who were and are attacked by critical race theory face, which is an attack was made. People didn't know what the attack was about. Neither side knew. That didn't stop the conservatives from making the attack, but it did stop those who were being attacked from knowing what to say and how to defend the work that is vital and that's necessary. And Jesse, I think you remember when we first started working together, one of the real challenges that we were facing with so many teachers and defenders saying, well, critical race theory isn't even taught in K through 12.
That's right.
Which, you know, we called it the pivot. And even, you know, the first couple of months.
Kimberle Crenshaw literally hosts a summer school program that she has hosted for years through her organization that has an entire track for K through 12 teachers about how to teach critical race theory in schools. Kimberle Crenshaw knows she's lying. She literally hosts a teacher professional development training program every single summer, and she has for at least 3 years that I know about, but probably was going on for longer than that, in which they have an entire section dedicated to high school teachers teaching critical race theory in K through 12 schools. It says it in the description. It is not unclear at all. Kimberle Crenshaw is lying, and she knows she's lying. By the way, this book that you see right here has been sold at both socialism conferences that I've gone to. Do you guys know what other book is sold at both socialism conferences that I've gone to? Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Socialists don't sell non-socialist books at the socialist conferences, guys. Why is this book being sold at socialism conferences if it's not socialism?
Months, I was saying, well, look, I'm not seeing critical. Our book isn't flying off the shelves, so I don't know what's going on.
Right.
And it took us all a while to realize that critical race theory was being used as a generic term for anything
wrong.
That was anti-racist.
Wrong.
Any anti-racist education, any education.
What does Rufo! Rufo! You always get a free bingo square when Rufo's mentioned. That's part of the rules. Anytime Rufo is mentioned in the happy hour presentation, free bingo square for everyone. Congratulations. What was I just gonna say? I forget. I don't know. I forget. I was so distracted by how handsome Chris Rufo looked in this picture that I just like lost it. Maybe it'll come back.
That elevated structural racism, any education that dealt with the policies and the practices that were grounded.
Wait. So here's what I was going to say. What does anti-racism mean? Does anyone want to take a guess what anti-racism means? We learned about it on Socialism Saturday a couple weeks ago. What does anti-racism mean? I'll get you guys a bingo card if you don't have one already. Hang on. If you got here late and haven't gotten your bingo card yet, I'll drop one in. Does anyone remember from a few Socialism Saturdays ago, what does anti-racism mean? Anti-racism means anti-capitalism. It means anti-capitalism. It means anti-capitalism. That's what it means. Anti-racism means anti-capitalism. Do you know why we know that? Because a socialist published a book that literally had the title, Racism Means Anti-Capitalism. You can't make this up. Eventually, they always say the quiet part out loud. You can go back and watch the episode of Socialism Saturday if you missed it.
In the past that continue to produce racially inequitable outcomes and institutions. All of that was packaged into the category, the Trojan horse called critical race theory. So while we were saying, oh, it's not even being taught in K through 12, in fact, they were going after what was being taught in K through 12. They were going after Ruby Bridges. They were going after the Montgomery bus boycott. They were going after Tulsa.
Do you know who went after Ruby Bridges? And it's one of the stupidest things that's ever happened in the conservative movement. Do you know who went after Ruby Bridges? Because that really did happen. She's not making that up. What conservative group went after Ruby Bridges? Is about a young black girl, okay? Ruby Bridges has nothing to do with critical race theory. It is just a book about a young black girl. That's all it is. What conservative group really did try to get Ruby Bridges banned from school because they thought it would make white children too uncomfortable? Anyone know? I'll just give it a second here because I know the chat takes a second to catch up to me. Oh, you guys are, yep. Moms for Liberty, the very first book back in the day when I first started screaming about how Moms for Liberty was going to ruin everything. The very first book that Moms for Liberty ever tried to get banned from the schools was not a sexual book, was not a pornographic book. It was Ruby Bridges. That happened. It was a group in Tennessee. And the reason that we know it happened is they went on CNN and bragged about it. And I covered it at the time. It's on the channel. You guys are so good. Moms for Liberty is the one that caused all these problems in the first place.
So they were going after the Federal Housing Act in the way that it created racially segregated housing stock that now is more.
And the reason that that's Ruby Bridges. And the reason that we need to talk about this is that this has been used against us forever since Moms for Liberty started this. This is one of the key talking points on the left. Can I even tell? First of all, so the left is not afraid of the book bans. The left is not afraid of the book bans at all. Why is the left not afraid of the book bans? Because the left is churning out more books at a clip than you can even possibly imagine. So if you get one book out of school, they're going to replace it with 5 more. You get those 5 books out of school, they're going to replace each of them with 5 more. That is the level at which they are churning out these books. They have massive amounts of publishers, massive amounts of material. They are never going to run out of books. It is going to be in a constant state of chasing your tail the entire time. But do you know how this does really benefit the left? Because they're not afraid of losing this battle. They use this to rile up their base. I heard about book bans in almost every single session at the socialism conference. Not because they're afraid of the book bans, because they're not. They use the book bans to piss off their base to get them to create more books. They're the ones playing 3D chess here. They are using every single thing the right does against them, and the right makes these boneheaded moves, like trying to ban a book about a little black girl because, ooh, the white children might want to read a book about a little black girl, which is stupid. And then the left takes that and uses it against them forever and a day to rile up their own base to get them to do more. Do you guys see how the game is played? The game is in the reaction. They get the right to react. They get the right, like Moms for Liberty, to do something stupid. And then they use that reaction against the right to make even more progress.
Consequential today than it was even when it happened, because as we know, the huge wealth disparity between African Americans and white Americans can trace its way back to the 1940s, when the white middle class was created out of federal housing policy. So it's taken us 2 years for all of us to realize that there's a shell game going on here. What they are calling critical race theory is everything that is about our racial history and our contemporary racial reality. So we have shifted the way that we respond to it. Rather than saying we don't teach critical race theory, we take seriously what they say they're after. And then we talk about, well, what does it mean to give your child a talk if you're African American? What does it mean to acknowledge that when you see the sirens in the rearview mirror, you put your hands at the 10 and 2 o'clock position? What does it mean to tell our children that—
Hang on. So Two Ladies Midwest is saying this was about 2 months ago. This was in June of 2023, June 12th, I think, of 2023. So this is recent, guys. Critical race theory is making a comeback. They were quiet about critical race theory was big in 2021, and then it kind of died down in favor of the gender stuff, the queer stuff. But let me just be blunt. The black community on the left has gotten pissed off that there's so much focus on gender and not as much focus on race. And I'm going to tell you this too. There was some weird thing at the socialism conference. I haven't really been able to figure out a way to quantify it, but it just came up over and over and over and over and over again. They want segregation. They want to be able to identify people by their race, to be able to group people by their race, to be able to— Bettina Love is this crazy teacher educator at Columbia University, and she was speaking at the socialism conference, and Bettina Love was actually arguing that school integration hurt black children. Like that Brown v. Board of Education, which integrated the schools, she argued that that was bad because black children all of a sudden had to learn from white teachers. And I mean, I suppose there is something to say about like I mean, I can like see kind of like the point in like a roundabout way, but like, did they want a permanently segregated society? It almost seems like they wanted black people to build up their entirely parallel society that was completely segregated from everyone else. That doesn't make sense to me, but that's what they're arguing for effectively. I mean, there's a lot of clips that I need to post. Like, there's a lot of clips that I need to post, and I'm just kind of working my way through it right now. Yeah, she made a really strong argument that black children were better off when schools were segregated. And I was like, huh, that's interesting.
We have to be twice as good to go half as far. These are all moments of acknowledging that we do not live in a colorblind world. They're moments of acknowledging that race continues to shape the life chances of people differentially on the basis of race. That is structural racism. That is also implicit bias. That is also history creating the platform through which competition today is racialized. That is all part of critical race theory. So we do exercises in many of our classes or talks in which we give people a whole range of scenarios and give them an A or a B option. The A option is usually the colorblind race denial option. The B is race realism. And most people opt for the B option. We say, congratulations, you are critical race theorists, right?
Right.
So if you understand these scenarios.
Kimberle Crenshaw right now is making the same argument. She's saying that things should be segregated and we shouldn't be colorblind. Didn't Columbia have a segregated graduation? It sounds like something Columbia would do. Guess what? Pop quiz. Where did the Frankfurt School set up shop when they came to the United States? They set up shop at Columbia University. That is why Columbia, not Harvard, as people might think. Harvard is uber woke, but like Columbia, there is no college in the United States that is more woke than Columbia, especially Teachers College at Columbia. If your child has a teacher that graduated from Teachers College at Columbia, you better watch the F out, because they're going to be a problem. I promise you.
You are critical race theorists. So that's the broad way we've been talking about it. There is a legal part of it that is historically what was critical race theory. It's basically the way that law reinforces structural forms of racism. Law tells us that, you know, these are race neutral and defensible. Law establishes, reinforces, and protects racial privilege. That's how critical race theory was traditionally analyzed and talked about. It's just the law's disciplinary contribution to our overarching understanding about how race is constructed, how racism is rationalized, and how it can be reinforced unless we have the tools to identify it, dismantle it, and create structures that are opportunity positive.
Thank you so much for that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for breaking that down for us. And just the language that CRT gives us to be able to do this type of analysis. And so you mentioned the historical context of CRT and the legal aspect of it. And so as a follow-up, I'd actually love for us to look at some of the language in Iowa's divisive concepts bill. And this is something as educators we can do in our
classrooms. Was this based
classrooms
off of
with
New Hampshire's?
and
Yeah,
and
this looks like
see
it was
and
based off of New
analyze what the
Hampshire's.
bill text actually says and have those critical conversations, also recognizing that in many places
So this should
it
be
is illegal
interesting.
and many educators.
So this should be interesting. So this language in the Iowa bill was very similar to the language in the New Hampshire anti-CRT bill. Now, of course, Chris Sununu and the Republicans ultimately sabotaged the New Hampshire CRT bill because they removed this second line. What was in the Iowa bill, that the United States and the state of Iowa are fundamentally or systemically racist. In New Hampshire, they removed this part, which made the anti-CRT bill in New Hampshire completely ineffective, because if you can teach that the United States, or New Hampshire in this case, is systemically racist or sexist, that means you can teach systemic racism. That means you can teach equity, which means you can teach CRT. So, by the way, the Republicans in New Hampshire knew this was a problem. The sponsor of the bill knew it was a problem, and he tried to fix it. And because the New Hampshire GOP was pissed off at the sponsor of the bill over something else, the New Hampshire GOP just told him basically, F off, we're not fixing the bill. The New Hampshire GOP is what sabotaged the anti-CRT bill in New Hampshire, not the Democrats, the Republicans. sabotage their own bill. Anyway, I've ranted about that extensively on the channel, but I want to point that out. I actually think it's going to be interesting to listen to them analyze this. But this is like the most important line in the entire bill because this is what deals with the systemic racism.
Leaders are under fire and having legal repercussions to teaching this truth. But I'd really love for us to go through this together, and I'll just read the bill text quickly, some examples. So divisive concepts includes all of the following. 1, that one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. 2, that the United States of America and the state of Iowa are fundamentally or systemically racist or sexist. 3, that an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. And then skipping forward to 8, that any individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of that individual's race or sex.
I just want to take this super chat real quick from Savrits. Good to see you, Savrits. Sun and moon and stars, aesthetic heaven, and the realm of matter. Sun, guess who? Birth through the moon, females, transformed mankind to the animal man, the werewolf. Ape from the DBZ. Savrits, you're getting deep today, my friend. I don't know what you're on today, but I appreciate it. The symbolism was conceived a long time ago. I do appreciate it, Savrits.
And then number 9, that meritocracy or traits such as hard work ethic are racist or sexist, or were created by a particular race to oppress another race. So when we apply,
hang on, let me turn off the CCs. Why would the woke left say that meritocracy or traits such as hard work are racist? Pop quiz. Why would the woke left argue that meritocracy or traits like hard work are racist? I know there's a delay. I'm just waiting for the delay in the chat. I know you guys know the answer to this, though. They would argue that meritocracy and hard work are racist because of capitalism. Because of capitalism. Because of capitalism. Because of capitalism. Exactly, Nick. Meritocracy and hard work uphold capitalism. So therefore, because whiteness means capitalism, it means the bourgeois, it means the property owner, the person in the power position, he who holds the power, the landlord, the business owner, etc., etc., etc. Whiteness means capitalism because it's about who has the private property, and you need meritocracy, which is hard work and individualism and effort. You need meritocracy to uphold capitalism. Exactly.
apply critical race theory to this law, what insights does CRT give us?
Well, let's start with the fact that this effort to effectively preclude certain topics and viewpoints is itself an embodiment of one of the main observations of critical race theory, which is race, racism, racial power, racial privilege, racial domination, racial subordination, are facilitated by and through the law. It's almost it's ironic, to say the least, that the anti-woke forces are actually using law to say that a discipline in law that looks at the way that racial power is encoded in law should be illegal. I mean, it's like,
right.
It's proving the point, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's sort of like eyebrows, off your head, kind of like, really? This is the move that you're going to make to disprove critical race theory? And then when we start looking inside of it, so critical race theory is implicated in number one, the idea, let's see, number 8, that any individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress. Now, this is an effort to create a right against the outcomes of education. It is an effort to say that certain people's feelings will be protected against critical inquiry. Now, one move that
What does she mean when she says critical inquiry? Because it's not just like critical thought, is it? That's what they want people to think it is. What does she mean when she says critical inquiry? Where does critical inquiry come from? They don't want people to know this. They just want people like, oh, we're just thinking critically about things. Of course, thinking critically is good about things, right? Isn't it a good thing to think critically about things? That's not what critical inquiry means. Nope. Keep guessing, guys. I'm going to wait. Well, yeah, this is the closest one so far. Critical inquiry is code word for critical theory. Critical theory, anytime you have critical theory, exactly. Ding, ding, ding. Chad Masters for the win. Critical theory is from the Frankfurt School, which means Marxism. Critical theory is the idea that you are constantly exploring or being critical to explore how racism occurred in any single circumstance. Now, it is like, you could actually argue that it's like a struggle session as well. I think that that's like a more colloquial thing. But remember, this is not just about like, this is not critical thinking in terms of like, you're looking at an issue from multiple perspectives. That's not what they're doing in this. The point of critical race theory is to explore how racism occurred in every circumstance. The assumption that racism occurred is already there. You're not allowed to look at it from a perspective in which racism did not occur. That is the point of critical theory, or critical race theory in this case. There's also critical queer studies, critical gender studies, except critical disability studies. The whole point is that you are looking at things through a very, very, very specific perspective. It's not about looking at it from all perspectives. It's from a really specific perspective that runs back to the Frankfurt School, which is designed to uphold Marxism. It's designed to reinforce the power struggles within society, which is a fundamentally Marxist perspective. So anytime you hear these people say critical thinking, critical analysis, they're not just talking about general critical thinking. They're talking about a very specific thing that is always and forever Marxism. Make sense?
One might make is to suggest that never has there been a time that the feelings of racialized, marginalized people has ever been the baseline for determining what is legitimate to teach and what is not. If anything, the entire field out of which many of us come, I come out of Africana studies, other people come out of various ethnic studies traditions. Remember when it first got started, but even today, they call that me search. They undermine the legitimacy of actually studying the histories and the political economy of socially marginalized groups. But suddenly, when psychological distress becomes a concern, it is the psychological distress of those who are racialized as white rather than those who are marginalized. So critical race theory looks at the distributional consequences of particular rules. It asks who is benefited and who is harmed. It goes beneath the surface neutrality of the law to ask what are its consequences, and what are the levers that produce this particular effort to use the
Thank you,
state to
Stavritz.
control ideas. There's no better example then of critical race theory being used to see how law is embodying.
I want to say this too. So anytime conservatives and the right are buying into this so-called anti-white thing, and by the way, I do not allow the term anti-white to be used on my channel because it is a specific term related to white identitarians, and I don't want to attract that. But like anytime the right does things like this, you play into the left's hands. Critical race theory is not about the color of your skin. Whiteness is not about the color of your skin. White supremacy is not about the color of your skin. They love white people who agree with them. They used to love Robin DiAngelo. Robin DiAngelo was a patron saint of the woke left. Robin DiAngelo is a white lady. There were plenty of white socialists at this conference, I promise you. They love white people who agree with them. They hate black people who disagree with them. It is not about the color of your skin. It is only about like whether or not you agree with their ideology. And when you do stuff like this, you hand them ammo to say, look, they're the racist bigots that we always told you they were. They're just racist bigots. Look at them. They're advocating for white power. They're just racist bigots. You hand that to them when you do this stuff.
Racial interests and disadvantaging particular racial interests. The last thing that I'll say is critical race theory elevates history. It looks at patterns and repetitious dimensions of how disempowerment happens. Divisive concepts, as we all know, was the idea that segregationists used against the civil rights movement. Divisive was the idea that the sit-ins and the freedom riders were basically the product of outside agitators. Well, let's think about divisive in the context of racial power.
Why are there so many people complaining about white people? Because they're trying to change the language and they're trying to agitate to make people react. They want you to react. When they show stuff like this, they want you to react. These are useful idiots that want you to react. Every time you react and you do shit like this, you give them what they want. They win every time you make it about race. There are also just a lot of stupid fucking people on the internet. We cannot discount that. There are a lot of stupid fucking people on the internet. There are stupid people on the left. There are stupid people on the right. As you guys know, I do have an IQ requirement to be a member of my audience. You need to have at least a 100 IQ to be able to understand the content that I'm doing. So we don't allow stupid people here. But there are a lot of stupid people on the internet.
To find these moments and these movements divisive means that your understanding of unity turns on and is dependent on maintaining the racial power that pre-existed. So when the civil rights movement was framed as divisive, what did that mean unity turned on? Unity turned on uncontested white supremacy. When these ideas are brought forward to this moment, when critical thinking about race, when so-called...
Danielle, this is exactly right. It's not about your skin color. It's about being anti-capitalist and pro-Marxist. That's what it's about. And by the way, they assume that all black people are socialists. They really do. This became very clear to me at the socialism conference. They assume that all black people are socialists.
wokeism is framed as divisive, what it is telling us is that the baseline against which this is called divisive is actually acceptable, defensible, and requires insulation. Well, what are all those things? Our world without anti-racism, our world without critical thinking about race, our world without race consciousness is a world in which life chances are racialized,
This is right,
a world
Taiwan.
in which lives are shorter, a world in which health is less.
This is the type of stuff that the white identitarians do. And by the way, guys, the white identitarians are just as racist as the critical race theorists. The white identitarians try to hijack the anti-CRT movement to recruit more white identitarians. I covered it on the Substack like 2 years ago. Anytime you see stuff like this, please do not buy into it. You are buying into a racist ideology that is no different than what Kimberle Crenshaw is pushing. This is white identitarian right here. Anytime you see the term anti-white, it is not about being fair and just and not being it is. If you see a term anti-white, they are explicitly being racist, guys. Explicitly. I promise you, if you go down the anti-white rabbit hole and you find out what groups are pushing the language and the term anti-white, you are going to run into actual racists and actual anti-Semites. And I know this because I did this 2 years ago. These are not good people. These are not good people to associate with. And I know that some of you have gotten sucked into this trap in the past. But if you're sucked into it and these are groups you're hanging around with, this is not going to have a good outcome. And it is certainly not what's going to defeat these people. In fact, these people are going to use you to get more people on their team.
Less robust, a world in which wealth is tremendously disproportionate, a world in which police can take lives without having to think twice about it. That is the world that's being defended as the world that is non-divisive, that is uniform, that is universal. Well, we know when they say that what we're doing is divisive, what we're actually interrupting is the assumption that white supremacy and its contemporary manifestations is completely and totally defensible, and our efforts to interrupt it is what is being divisive. Critical race theory brings...
White supremacy means capitalism. They're actively trying to disrupt capitalism. It's not about race, it's about the economic system.
Brings that analysis into those claims and gives us the tools that are necessary to disrupt the hold that that has on our demands for justice.
Yeah, that's so useful. I can see myself using that law from Iowa in the classroom and having the students analyze it and then showing this very segment to the students to have them think more deeply about the context of those laws. And I always love how...
Did you notice that she didn't actually analyze the law at all? I was actually looking forward to the analysis of the law. She didn't analyze the law at all. She just moved on and said, it's racist if we can't teach what we want. This is what they do all the time, guys. They answer the question that they want to answer, not the question that's asked, the one that they want to answer.
You thoroughly research the history that has led up to the moments that we're talking about and use the history to understand what's going on today. So I wanted to go that direction now and ask you about the Stono Rebellion in 1739, where enslaved people were outlawed from learning to read and write the following year. And you know, hundreds of Black schools were burned down during Reconstruction, over 600. You know, they burnt down freedom schools during the Civil Rights Movement. From the Jim Crow era until today, Black schools in the South and the North have been dramatically underfunded by billions of dollars, according to some recent studies. So why has Black education always been such a threat to some people in this country? And what role can the struggle for anti-racist education play in broader movements for social justice and freedom?
Well, this is exactly where freedom to learn lives, Jesse. So we know just the basics. Knowledge is power. We know that because those who are in power want to take the knowledge away from us, right? Mm-hmm. So to sustain and maintain power, particularly to sustain and maintain the status of enslaved people, to sustain and maintain the status of economically marginalized people, to sustain and maintain the disenfranchisement of those people. The key to that is depriving them of the knowledge that they need in order to be literate about the ways in which their subordination is reinforced and made to appear to simply be the way things have to be. Our holiday.
When she's saying the ways in which their subordination is reinforced, what does she mean? How is their subordination being reinforced? Their subordination is being reinforced through capitalism. Because these people believe that Black and brown people can never get ahead in a society built on individualism and meritocracy. They believe that Black and brown people can only do anything if they're given an extra handout, an extra leg up. That's what equity means. It is an incredibly racist ideology that is quite literally the racism of like soft expectations, right? Exactly. Freedom is slavery. Exactly. You guys just have to like hammer into your head every single problem that they're identifying. I promise you, the root cause of that is always and forever capitalism.
It's coming up next week, Juneteenth. It's partly, truly about emancipation, but it's really about knowledge. Because without knowing the status of being freed, without the news arriving to the Texas freedmen that they were in fact no longer enslaved people, they were unable to claim their freedom. So this is power showing us how significant, how important, how absolutely essential knowledge is to realize the freedom that is ours to take. If we look, as you just noticed over history, at every point where it was necessary to push back against liberation struggles, at every point where the demands for liberty, the demands for freedom reached a crucial, critical point of inflection. The pushback, the resistance, the retrenchment went to knowledge. It went to what you can learn, what you can teach, whether you can read, what you could write, what you could say. In this country, to even write about the demands for emancipation was considered sedition. It was against the state's interests to actually be able to advocate for Black freedom. We like to think that that was a century and a half ago. We like to think, thank God, that that's not the world we live in anymore. But think about it. Is it really that long ago? Are we really free from that when we can be in a society where 22 states have passed what they call anti-woke laws, where there are particular things that cannot be said in the classroom about racism and white supremacy, where if teachers do say these things or come close to being interpreted to saying these things, that they can lose their jobs, they could lose their licenses? We think that we're not in that period anymore, where the state can dictate what knowledge is available. So I think if we think seriously about the continuation of this suppression over the time, if we look all the way back to 1739 and ask what were the motivating factors that caused both the state.
By the way, so one of the things I didn't talk about in that Confronting the Backlash presentation that I played you those clips from earlier with Jesse Hagopian in them is that there was another guy in that presentation named Wayne. And what Wayne was talking about is that, do you know how the socialists are like speaking about Asian people? Because of course, like, Asian people are always like held up as like, you know, the ones that perform better than white people, right? They're saying that it is wrong to uphold Asian people as the quote unquote model minority because white people just hold up Asian people because they work hard and they make them this model minority that all other minority groups need to live up to. And it's just like and we have to they're literally talking about how like the Asians need to be taken down a peg because we shouldn't be holding up Asians as the model minority. It's weird. I have to go back and listen to it, but that's the basic gist. It's not even that they're white adjacent. It's that they're annoyed that Asians are held up as like the minority standard.
And vigilantes to attack education and draw the clear line to Moms for Liberty, to American Legislative Council, to foundations, to the Republican Party. If we ask what the connections are liberty demands are met with the absolute imperative to shut down the ability to be literate, to learn, to understand, to read, to write, to advocate, and to say. This is the same struggle. As they say, old wine, new bottles, still does the same thing.
Ooh, yes, yes, yes. I just appreciate how you continue to point us back to the patterns that show up through history, and how the opposition doesn't want us to be able to uncover those patterns because we change them through our resistance. And so, speaking of another pattern in history, we've seen some of these same tactics as you've named play out in history as a means of stifling movements for social justice. So periods of advancement towards social justice have always been met with white supremacist backlash. And so given the white wing narratives about protecting children, right, this idea that they're against shaming white kids in schools by teachers pushing CRT, can you talk about the connection between how the red baiting of the Red Scare was used to attack the civil rights movement?
They made this argument. Jesse Hagopian made this argument at the socialism conference. This is probably where he got the argument.
Oh, and it's such it's such a understudied period of our history. I think that there is the assumption that that again that period is behind us, and that we transcended it, rather than recognizing that in fact freedom struggles, particularly freedom struggles of the descendants of enslaved people.
Anytime you guys hear a person using the term struggle over and over and over and over and over again, that person is a socialist. The term struggle, the term liberation, abolition, there are a whole bunch of other ones, but the term struggle is like, struggle is the revolution. Struggle is, they consider themselves to be, I cannot tell you how many times I heard the term struggle over the weekend. Like, they consider themselves in a perpetual struggle against all of society to achieve their revolution of that will liberate people from the carceral, like, oppressive state. So collective, Reagan, exactly. But struggle is like, if you hear someone saying struggle, 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 that person is a socialist. You can remember it by the term struggle session. There's a reason it's called a struggle session. It is the perpetual revolution.
Have never overcome the distorting effect of the Red Scare. Our very ways of conceptualizing racism and white supremacy, for example, the idea that racism is basically a thought crime and not a structure crime, that it can be corrected by goodwill rather than redistribution of stolen wealth. The fact that the solution is not seeing race rather than dismantling whiteness and white privilege. These are all
White privilege is
consequences
capitalist
of
privilege.
the tremendous pressure that was placed on Black freedom seekers in the 40s and the 50s to shrink the territory, shrink the terrain upon which racism was being contested, to fold it into comfortable narratives about American exceptionalism, to fold the problem into a package that could be solved by expressions of goodwill and goodness, as opposed to understanding the problem in terms of its implications across the economy, across the political structure, and across many institutions that embodied and reproduced white privilege and power. How do we understand then why 50 years after the Civil Rights Movement, we still don't have anything close to parity when it comes to matriculation in higher education, nothing close to parity when it comes to wealth, nothing close to parity when it comes to political power. How do we understand it? We understand it because all of those arenas were framed as sacrosanct and reinforced by the idea that if you even deem to think it is important and valid to think about wealth, you are actually showing that you are not dyed-in-the-wool American, that you are red to the core, that you are anti-American.
I think it's interesting that they're talking about class. Does anyone else find that interesting? I think it's interesting. Savrit says, imagine you needed a reimagining population dumbed down on self-centered consumption, like lust for material things. I think that you basically just described our current society, Savrits. Unfortunately, this process was seeded centuries ago, and it's designed to be permanent. Yeah, you're not wrong. Thank you for the depressing super chat, Savrit. You're not wrong. And it is all run by their public schools.
And that you represented expressly why Black freedom struggles had to be suppressed. You are sitting in the aftermath of COINTELPRO, of a federal government that basically sought to destroy the freedom movement using tools of anti-communism, using red baiting, using the ability to separate out critical thinking from what was considered to be safe and comfortable. We've not
you
overcome
weren't wrong,
that.
Savrits. I'm just saying it was depressing.
It's still shaping how freedom demands are understood. And the kicker is that at the end of the day, the use of innocence, the use of the white child as the subject that must be protected at all costs is the way that Brown versus Board was dismantled. It is the way that it was rendered illegitimate. It is the way that the project that was Brown versus Board of Education is largely over. And it is the way that the aftermath of that project, the knowledge that got developed, is now also being framed as shaped as destructive to the interests of white children and destructive to the interests of the Republic. This is the
I want to point out that there are some things that these people don't agree on, and this is going to be one of those things. So I think Bettina Love would actually disagree with what Kimberle Crenshaw is saying. They aren't all walking in lockstep. They don't always agree with each other. They have just as much infighting as our side does, except they're far more productive normally, and so it balances out a lot better for them than it does for us. But like, they don't agree on everything, and I think this is one of the things that they don't agree on.
The aftermath of the great taming of the freedom struggle.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for grounding us in that history. And
Stunning and brave, Kimberle. Stunning and brave.
I just want to point out to people that the Zen Education Project has an incredible lesson on how to teach about COINTELPRO, since you mentioned COINTELPRO. Ursula Wolf-Roca created a really great lesson plan that I think everyone should use. And I'm really excited that the teachers are getting more of that history. And so, do you want to move to breakout groups now, Sierra? Or should I ask
breakout
one more question?
Groups?
Move to breakouts?
I think we're at the point where we're moving into breakouts.
We've been digging into history a little bit when we left off, and I want to pick right back up there, because one of the most instructive eras for drawing lessons about how to build a Black freedom movement is Reconstruction. And yet the Zen Education Project report that we released shows just how poorly this era is taught in school, if it's taught at all, right? And state standards and textbooks still often promote a lost cause narrative that hides Black people's tremendous advancements for freedom during this era. And I'm curious about what lessons you draw from Reconstruction that can help us in the struggle for anti-racist education today, and what will it take to build a broad-based mass movement to defend the right to teach the truth about systemic racism?
Wow. Well, I'll start with the Reconstruction question. We're actually, trying to think about where does the mass movement come, because we know that's what we're going to need in order to take our history back. When I think about Reconstruction and critical race theory, the two basically mutually construct one another. Critical race theory takes up the question of how a civil war, how the successful effort to turn 4 million enslaved people into citizens was ultimately and utterly dismantled by an institution called the Supreme Court. And that dismantling is not simply historical. All of the major cases that robbed the Reconstruction era laws of their enforceability are still good law. The civil rights cases, which was the case in which the Supreme Court basically said that the formula that Congress had created to, first of all, give us citizenship, make us citizens of the national government, and then empower Congress to protect us against racial violence, against discrimination, against being pushed out of the political arena. The court basically said that entire formula was unconstitutional. And the added dimension to it was to say that for us to expect to be protected in our new citizenship was for us to be expecting preferential treatment. In other words, a group of people less than 20 years after the end of enslavement, with the indention on our wrists of the chains, we're being told that we were expecting too much, that we were being preferred in order to have our rights as new citizens be protected by the government that we helped to win the war to free us. If preferential treatment could be used to dismantle emancipation less than 20 years after the end of slavery, think about what the frame of preferential treatment or reverse discrimination can do through the rest of history. That is exactly what's happening now. When people say teaching our history is violating their children's interests, they're practicing the same logic of the civil rights cases. When owners of restaurants and facilities said that to serve you violates our civil rights, they are practicing Redeemer constitutionalism, which destroyed Reconstruction. When they say sending my children to an integrated school violates their rights to go to a segregated school, they are rehearsing Reconstruction's repeal. So this stuff that we know is circular, is cyclical, that it happens over and over again, is made possible because of the takeover of the courts of a white supremacist jurisprudence. That's what we're seeing happening now in this court. That's why we're likely to lose affirmative action. And that's why it makes no sense to think about what's happening solely in terms of the racial identity of the people doing the work. Clarence Thomas is as much a danger to the future of the Constitution and the future of marginalized people as Justice Taney was in 1865.
How could Clarence Thomas possibly be a danger to the American people? Clarence Thomas is very, 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 very Black. How is it, if critical race theory is about race, how is it that Clarence Thomas could be a danger to people by being on the Supreme Court? Because he's a capitalist! Because Clarence Thomas is a big believer in individualism and meritocracy, because he is not a Black socialist. He is pro-capitalism. Clarence Thomas helps to uphold capitalism. This is another example, guys, of how this works. Like, they hate Black people who disagree with them. They hate Black people that disagree with them so much that they don't even consider them Black. Savrits, thank you for the super chat. Hang on. The deconstructionist ideologies creating angry Blacks and self-guilty whites is but a tool for the one world conspirators, the real bad guys. That is right, Savrits. They want to keep us at war with each other so that we are not fighting them. You guys are so good. So many right answers in the chat. Oh, they hate Ben Carson too. Oh yeah, they hate that guy.
1870, 1875. The question is what it is and how they use the law to reinforce redemption, to reinforce the lost cause, to reinforce the second-class citizenships of non-whites. That's what critical race theory tries to unpack, uncover, and show how we're always constantly revisiting the opportunity to finally get it right. That's what we're confronted with today.
Oh, wow. I'm just speechless. Oh my goodness. Yes, my mind is just blown. Those critical connections.
By the way, this is what they do all the time at the socialism conference when they don't understand what someone has just said. They just go, yes, you are amazing. Thank you so much for that. All these connections, all this da-da-da-da-da. They like make up words. They're like, oh my God, you are so Kimberly, you are amazing and stunning and brave and beautiful. And I'm so thankful that you're here today. This is what they do when they, yeah, my mind is blown by you, Kimberly. Wow. Like
History and what you just said, it's something to just sit with.
something to
That's
sit
what
with,
we're confronted with today.
marinate,
Mm,
ruminate.
powerful. Whew. And so, as we continue to talk a little bit about the law, one of the concepts that Ron DeSantis and the Florida Board of Education objected to when they denied the AP African American Studies course was intersectionality, a term
Yes.
you developed to help us understand overlapping forms of privilege and oppression that inform our identities. And I do have to say personally that your work helped me to have language for my own experience. And I believe that when we have that language, when we're able to name something, then we're able to organize either for it
Yes.
or against it. And so thank you for that language to understand my own experience. And so why are racists and transphobes so scared of intersectionality? And why is this idea so critical to teach to young people?
Well, Sierra, I think you just said it. If you can't name something, if you don't have a way of creating a container for myriad experiences that reflect the same pattern, you are unable to hold it to transform it. I think there was and is a recognition that these concepts, these ideas allow things to surface in a way that allows them to be quantified and consequently identified for transformation. Intersectionality has been, as you point out, used by any number of people, any number of groups to identify overlapping patterns of disempowerment. When you can identify it, then you are in a better position to be able to interrogate it, a better position to be able to build connections with people who you might not see as having a common interest. You're better able to dislodge the hold of this is the way things have to.
Ain't this the truth, Dennis? DeSantis seems to me to be the PragerU of US politics. Oh God, that is so true. You're not wrong, buddy. You're not wrong at all. I think PragerU is trash, just so people know. Just so you know why I'm laughing.
To be and actually say, no, nothing has to be this way. We can actually transform the lives that we have been given. We can transform the lives in the world in which we live. And I mean, it doesn't take me to say it. If you actually look at the people who have attacked intersectionality, they will say precisely why they're uncomfortable with the idea. They talk about the consequences of challenging the hegemony.
Yo, remember, what we're watching now is socialism light. This is like, what we're watching now is like, it's like an appetizer. It's not even, it's like an amuse-bouche. It's not even real socialism. It's like socialism that's like painted up and has a nice bow on it and is like much easier to deal with. It's like socialism with drinks, where it's like you don't really have to think that hard. So like this is not what I endured for 3 days, I guess is my point. What I endured for 3 days, it's diet socialism. Exactly. It's diet socialism. Exactly. I was eating the good, buttery, beefy socialism. The socialism that's made out of bugs and not even good food, but still it's like hearty and it fills you up. Anyway, yeah, the blowing smoke up your ass socialism is what we're watching now. Socialism light, like Bud Light. Socialism with training wheels. Exactly. Exactly.
Of certain people, particularly straight, white, cisgendered men. And they have been, interestingly, the ones that say intersectionality takes something away from them. It creates a new pariah. It only creates a pariah if you think that you're right to being the subject of every story, the center of every project, the interest that always has to be reaffirmed. Only if you think that are you afraid of intersectionality. If, on the other hand, you are aware of, believe in, support the idea that democracy really requires us to find tools to tell the deeper story of who we are, find resources to create truly inclusive educational practices. If you are the mind that we...
Yasmin says in the chat, I told you white men hold up capitalism, Carlin. Okay, why is that? Pop quiz for the chat. Why do white men hold up capitalism? Any guesses? Why do white men hold up capitalism? No, it is good that they do, but I want to know if people know why they hold up capitalism. What is the logic? What is the woke leftist logic that says why do the woke leftists think that white men hold up capitalism? Yes, Savritz in with the oh my God, Mark, thank you. I'm going to get that super chat in a sec. Savritz in with the right answer, guys, the gold star, because white men are the ones that crafted society and brought slaves to America, and they crafted all of society around what would benefit white men, and that is why these people believe white men hold up capitalism. Well done, Savritz. Mark, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the work you do, Carlin. We truly appreciate everything you do, and we'll continue to support you and share your work, always giving you credit. We need you to continue fighting. From Mark and Ashley. Thank you, Mark and Ashley. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Your support means a lot. Mark, you've been such a great supporter since we met, and I'm so glad that we've connected. And, I really appreciate your work as well. And, we got to help each other. All right. Guys, we have about 14 minutes of this left, so we're rounding out to the end. We have another super chat from Queen Beth of the chat. Thank you, Queen Beth. Hail, comrades. Greetings, fearless leader. Just sending some love to my peeps. See you on Bitch Fest. Yes, we will do Bitchcraft tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thank you, Beth. I hope you're feeling well. And, make sure you're taking care of yourself. And don't stream at the same time as me again, Beth. You make people choose, and it's not fair. I'm just kidding. Queen Beth can stream whenever she wants to talk about coins or whatever she wants to talk about. It's fine. All right, guys, we have about 15 minutes left. Let's wrap this party up. I didn't even get to my second beer today.
All suffer when anti-racism and democracy are both contested concepts. If that's your belief, then intersectionality is not a threat at all. I'll say this to just wrap it up. One of the points of departure for
Autumn, just so you know, this is how we know you're a woman, Autumn. Men don't say, her stream was so lovely, Beth is a sweetheart. Men don't say that, Autumn. Maybe if they're gay, really flamboyantly gay, but you know who said stuff like this? Women, because you're a woman, Autumn, and we know you're a woman. We know it. You can say you're a man all you want, but men don't talk like this unless they are exceptionally flamboyantly gay. And you keep saying that you're straight, and so I'm still going to go that you're a woman.
Our work on advancing the freedom to learn is that the institutions and the thinking that we have to worry about the most when we're trying to protect our freedom is not just the DeSantis's of the world. They're clearly problematic, but they are doing what their interests
Stephen, don't give Autumn credit.
They must do. They want to undermine our democracy. They want to marginalize. They want to keep the angry masses motivated and mobilized. So they are on mission and they're on point.
Yes.
The real problem is the folks who claim to be the educators, claim to want to open up coursework that provides opportunity for the energies that came to fore during 2020, the young people who were demanding concepts to help them think about how they could have watched an African-American man basically be killed over 8 minutes, wanting to understand what is structural about racism. Those institutions that claimed that they wanted to embrace this moment, but at the first moment that they ran into trouble against the DeSantises of the world, the first moment that the concepts like intersectionality, like structural racism, or the political movements like Black Lives Matter were contested, they were willing to negotiate away. They were willing to throw these ideas under the bus. And in doing so, saying, particularly with respect to intersectionality, these ideas have been so robbed of their meaning. They have been so diminished by controversy that they're no longer politically or educationally useful. That is enabling the right to do what they do. All the right has to do is say ideas are controversial, or to say we don't like these ideas. And when our centrist institutions, like the College Board, like some of our publishers, when they're willing to say, well, we have to back away from these ideas because they're controversial, they have given the victory to the DeSantises of the world. They are the ones who are willing to say, as long as there are some people who are willing to go to the mat and we're willing to take these ideas out of the curriculum, they are the ones that are making the right wing successful. I'll just remind everybody what happened to the hill we climbed. One person complained about that. And that person had the veto power over millions of people who were inspired by that poem. Now take that and multiply it across critical race theory, across anti-racism, across intersectionality. And we have not only the lost cause coming back again, we have the lost cause on steroids, because we're talking about a very few, a minority of a minority being able to dictate the terms by which we can know our own lives and the terms by which we can create our own futures.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I'm so excited to dig more into this conversation about intersectionality soon. I'm even thinking, Sierra, that we should work on developing a lesson on intersectionality and the history of Black women, from Sojourner Truth to Claudia Jones to the Combahee River Collective to Kimberle Crenshaw, tracing this history of detailing overlapping identities and systems of power and privilege and oppression, so that students can know that history and apply it to their lives today. So that would be a project to come, hopefully.
Yes.
But we just have a few more minutes here, last 4 minutes maybe. So I want to jump into one more question, because Kimberle, you've been so deeply involved in the movement to defend anti-racist teaching, and I am so grateful not only for the immense intellectual contribution.
Remember, we just heard at the beginning of this stream, Jesse Hagopian saying that anti-racist teaching and pushing for anti-racist teaching in schools was critical to using the education system to build the socialist world. He literally said that. It's on my Substack, the article that's up now right on the front, and we heard that clip at the beginning. And so now Jesse Hagopian, he's not going to say the quiet part out loud because they're not in socialism space now. But he's like, Kimberle, how do we continue to push anti-racist teaching? This was a couple of months ago. And then Jesse Hagopian last weekend at the socialism conference said that teaching anti-racist teaching is a critical thing to building the new socialist world.
that you've given the Black freedom struggle and movements for social justice, but also your willingness to roll up your sleeves and get the work.
Hang on, I got a super chat coming in from Milo. Milo, thank you. Everyone remember, no one is teaching CRT in schools. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, that's been a joke for a while. Thank you, Milo.
Done and organize these days of action to help defend my colleagues and teachers all across the country doing this work. You know, when way too many liberals were just sitting at home hemming and hawing and wondering what to do when this attack on critical race theory started, you all at AAPF launched the Truth Be Told initiative from the jump, and the freedom to learn.
He basically just called Kimberle Crenshaw a socialist. Did everyone catch that? I'm going to bet you didn't. Jesse Hagopian. Okay, so you got to remember, socialists hate liberals. Socialists hate Democrats. Okay? They think that liberals and Democrats are basically useless. So what Jesse Hagopian just said was, when liberals were not doing anything in the wake of the pandemic and blah, 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 Kimberle, you launched a whole initiative because the liberals weren't doing it, and so you did it. He basically just called Kimberle Crenshaw socialist. Let's go back and listen. I apologize. I turned off the captions.
Jump into one more question, because Kimberle, you've been so deeply involved in the movement to defend anti-racist teaching, and I am so grateful not only for the immense intellectual contributions that you've given the Black freedom struggle and movements for social justice, but also your willingness to roll up your sleeves and get the work.
Anytime you hear the term social justice, you need to think socialist. That'd be a good t-shirt. Social justice equals socialism.
Done and organize these days of action to help defend my colleagues and teachers all across the country doing this work. You know, when way too many liberals were just sitting at home hemming and hawing and wondering what to do when this attack on critical race theory started, you all at AAPF launched the Truth Be Told initiative from the jump, and the Freedom to Learn campaign and the CRT summer school, and have participated in all these national days.
Oh, are you saying that Kimberle taught CRT summer school, which explicitly, and I got a hold of the program, which explicitly taught about how to teach critical race theory in K through 12 schools? Is that what you're admitting, Jesse? Thank you.
Of action and this June 10th action. And one of the messages you've been lifting up is the connection between the anti-CRT legislation and attacks on democracy. And so can you just tell us a little bit more about that connection, and what do you think we need to be doing at this time strategically? You know, what will it take to fight back against these forces?
Yeah. Well, and I want to thank you all for being our first partners in this work. As you remember very well, when President Trump signed the executive order, basically laying the groundwork for what has now become a firestorm that has spread across the country. You know, we say 22, 25, actually 49 states have seen some kind of legislation introduced. It's not just a red state problem. In fact, there are more of these local laws in California than even Texas. People are unaware that there are blue state arenas for precisely this struggle. So, you know, our challenge consistently is not just or primarily against the MAGA nation. Like I said, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. Our challenges are allies. Our challenges are people who looked at January 6th and said, that's not who we are. which was
Mm.
basically telling us that they didn't read anything about redemption. They don't really know the history. And if they do know the history, they are denying the extent to which that history constantly walks among us, always there, to be reactivated again. There's so many people who would say things like, well, it can't happen here, basically meaning Europe. It's already happened here. What do they think redemption was? What do they think genocide was? It is our own personal way in which fascist elements in American history attach themselves to white supremacy and find the easy path to the middle of the town square. That's what it means to basically say anti-wokeness is going to be the primary theme, the primary organizing principle through which MAGA imports and projects its values onto the public education system. And we don't have to ask or speculate. They had basically said, we are going after public education. We are going after higher education. We want to dismantle this institution, which was the primary driving institution behind the effort to dismantle white supremacy. It wasn't an accident that Brown versus Board of Education took place in education. It wasn't an accident that one of the most significant things that came out of Reconstruction was public schools. That is where we have laboratories of democracy. That is where we learn the idea that democracy is supposed to not be just about how we count votes, but how we count belonging, how we count the conditions that have to be in place for us to actually say that any particular outcome is the product of mass participation. What do you have to really participate in a democracy? You have to have education. It doesn't exist without publicly funded, effective education. So that's why it's important to connect the dots. It's important to look at those maps and see that the same states that are behind the effort to suppress the right to vote are the same states that are behind anti-woke laws. They're the same states that are banning the books. They're the same people who are banning the right to choose. They are the same elements across all of these different states. So it behooves us to find the connections, because we cannot win an asymmetrical war. And right now, that's what we're in. One side has resources that are virtually unlimited. They have their organizers, they have their strategists.
No, they don't.
They have their intellectuals.
No, they don't.
They even have their military. We're still trying to figure out, when they say critical race theory, who they talking about? Are they talking about us? Are they talking about?
We got our work to do.
If we don't understand that we are in one. So, you asked, Jesse, what do we have to do? I think we have to wake up to the fact that, we can't outrun this monster. It's coming for all of us. That's what we learned, how anti-woke turned into Don't Say Gay, which turned into where we are now. So number one, there's no outrunning this. Number two, education is key to democracy. You can't save democracy without saving education. And now you can't save education without saving anti-racism. They are all one and the same.
You can't save education without saving anti-racism. Look at that smug smile on her face. Remember, guys, anti-racism means anti-capitalism, and we know this because there's quite literally a book titled Anti-Racism Means Anti-Capitalism. This is not theoretical. In fact, hang on. What's this? Racism cannot be separated from capitalism. Angela Davis. I got this at the socialism conference. Anti-racism means anti-capitalism.
Wow. Oh my goodness. What a moving note to end on. I know I speak for both Jesse and I when I say we could probably ask you questions all day.
Yeah, I want to
Because
be in one of your
yes,
classes.
I know, me too. I've just been soaking it up.
Let's
because
do
it's
it.
so powerful.
Don't forget, Critical Race Theory Summer School is coming up this summer.
Yes.
Look for
Oh,
us July 30th to August 3rd.
isn't that nice?
Yes, thank you so
Isn't that
much
nice?
for the work that you do, but more
I am
importantly, the
gonna frame it.
person
I
that you
paid
are. We're just
$6
so
for that poster,
appreciative
Steven.
that you created time and space
I
to
am
be
gonna
here with us
frame
so
it.
that we could continue to learn, so we can. I'm just feeling so fired up and encouraged and moved and frustrated, just holding all of the emotions right now. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We
My
really
honor.
are so, so grateful.
I'm right there with you, Sierra. I'm feeling all of that. And I want to encourage everyone to pick up some of the work from Dr. Kimberle Crenshaw. Seeing Race Again
The
has been
work
really
equals her
important
book.
for things that I'm writing right now, and I think it will help you all. You know, of course, the Critical Race Theory book. Pick these books up. Sign up at the AAPF website to be part of the Truth Be Told campaign and Freedom to Learn. And just thank you so much for this conversation. And we want to give people time to give their feedback on this session and the content and the format. So we put a link in the chat so that you can give us feedback on what you learned this evening. But before we do the evaluation, I want everyone to unmute yourself and give your thank yous to Dr. Crenshaw and to each other for your commitment to learning and teaching a people's history.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
awesome.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Most on time, most relevant.
Very powerful. Thank you.
I love that laugh.
Wow.
Wow.
All right, that's enough talking. That's enough. I can only take so much crosstalk in my ears. Guys, you made it through another happy hour. I think this was a very informative happy hour. Good introduction for those of you who are new to critical race theory, because that's obviously making a comeback. Remember, critical race theory was never taken out of schools. Conservative media just stopped reporting on it. Just because conservative media stops reporting on something doesn't actually mean it's over. It just means that they've stopped reporting on it because they reported on the gender stuff for a long time. And now critical race theory is making a comeback, and maybe conservative media will catch on and maybe they won't. But I always knew this was going to rebound. And why? Because the Black population is pissed that the trans population got so much effing attention, and now and we're talking about it in socialist circles. We're not talking about normal people, we're talking about socialists. And so now we have to give a little bit more love to the Black socialists. So it's making a comeback. Guys, that has been happy hour for today. Now, as a programming note, tomorrow I will be holding a Bitchcraft call in my community at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That is 3 p.m. Eastern Time. How do you get invited to that call, you ask? I'm glad that you did. The ways you get invited to that call is by becoming a supporter in my community. The best way that you can support the work I'm doing is by signing up as a paying supporter on my Substack for $8 a month, $80 a year. I will be sending out a link to the Substack via the chat function tomorrow around 2:30 in the afternoon, because we do start Bitchcraft at 3. If you are a paying member of my locals community, you will get the Bitchcraft link. If you are a paying member of the Patreon community, you will get the Bitchcraft link. If you become a member of this here YouTube channel, you will get the Bitchcraft link and all that good stuff. And then you can come join us for 2 hours of crafting and open conversation. And then we go right into Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m. On Saturdays, I go live at 6 p.m., not at 5 p.m. because it's my weekend too. All right. And so we are going to be watching a keynote from the Socialism Conference tomorrow for Socialism Saturday. We're going to be watching the closing keynote. I'm really excited about it. Or maybe it wasn't the closing keynote. It was definitely an important keynote. I just haven't watched it yet. You guys are basically helping me do my socialism homework. I appreciate it. But we're going to be hearing from one of the patron saints of socialism, and that's going to be Naomi Klein, about how capitalism is a conspiracy. That's going to be tomorrow at 6 p.m. And then, of course, we are watching a movie in the supporter Discord on Sunday. I still don't know what that movie is, but I'm sure that Jennifer has picked out a great one. When is the next Sophie stream? I don't know. I don't have any Sophie material right now. We've gone through our Sophie material. Well, Steven, you should send Sophie a nice little note on Instagram if you can, because she seems to be much more responsive on Instagram than she is on Twitter. Tell Sophie that we love her and you would love to see her talk to me, and that she really should, and we really love her, and we're not going to make fun of her, we're not going to be mean to her, but that Sophie should. Oh, it's Bubble Boy. That's right. We are watching Bubble Boy tomorrow in honor of Murphy's Pool's birthday. Thank you, Reagan. I appreciate that. And this is a special treat for Murphy's Pool, because Murphy's Pool was also the hero that got my badge at the socialism conference. And so I'm going to be extra nice to him. So Bubble Boy in the supporter Discord on Sunday at 8 p.m. in honor of our friend Murphy's Pool. Guys, that's all I have for right now. Please do mount that like button on the way out the door. And I will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m., if not sooner. Take care, guys, and we will see you soon. Bye.